Awesome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the bi-weekly cloudfoundry on Kubernetes working group forum meeting. There is a notes document that I will be pasting in chat for everyone to add topics to. If you have any that you'd like to add, please drop them in there. Otherwise, you can drop them in the Zoom chat and I can manually add them myself. We have a few topics on there already. Looks like about 3 or 4 of them. So if you have any more to add, do so, but we're going to get rolling on the first one. So the first one is code climate. We don't appear to have access to mark issues as won't fix. And the American side, maybe we need to set some team membership.
Yeah,
I
so
think you have to log into code climate with your GitHub account in order to be able to do this.
we tried logging in. It didn't appear to make any difference for us. So
yeah, I have exactly the same problem actually. And if I log in, nothing happens. Like I don't see any control or any menu or anything. I can just filter stuff, but I can't change them. I don't know what makes us different. Apparently some people can mess with things, but I don't know what makes you that special power. I don't know what gives you that. I don't know.
When you click the login button on code climate, do you choose velocity or quality?
So I go on login. I'm already logged in. User settings.
Can you log out and log in again?
Access public repos. Used to set up public repos on code climate. Access private repos. I need to I can grant more access, but that's it. I don't know. Log in with GitHub. Continue.
But do you log in into quality or velocity?
I don't get to choose. Like I just log in and it gets me in.
If you go to codeclimate.com, there is a white login button top on the right, and if you hover on it, I got velocity and quality.
Oh, you think I'm logging in the wrong thing?
Maybe.
Oh man, maybe.
yeah, ironically, you would think logging into the site where your code issues are showing up would be sufficient, but
yeah.
And then
also,
you have
very
to
funny
that you already have a GitHub account.
If I go to /quality and I open the burger menu, I just get these semi-transparent overlay with nothing in it. It just looks at me like that. Cool. Maybe it's really bad. It's all really bad. Yeah, I'm logged into quality. I see the dashboard. It doesn't work.
I have a somewhat separate issue that I'll just have to figure out, which is I've already registered for code climate before with an email rather than my GitHub, so it won't let me log in with my GitHub credentials. But that's all right. That's for me.
It might be, we might have to like email support or something. Because it's clearly not working as expected.
Well, it's unfortunate.
maybe this is like one of those things where you need to share you need enough privileges for code climate to see what organizations you're a member of. Because when I log in, I see like one repository and it's in my personal org.
Wait, let me try this. Like I'm gonna give it, oh wow. I'm giving it extra permissions. Let's see if this does the trick.
Oh, this has my EMC email address. That's not right.
Vintage.
Thanks, GitHub.
Yeah, I still don't see any repositories. I don't know. It's clearly bad. I gave it access to my public repositories. Still don't see anything.
I just see one repository and it's the Korifi one. So maybe you have
But
to
where?
add it.
In the dashboard?
Yeah, on the front page.
Add a repository. And it shows me all my repositories.
Open source, one repository, GitHub.
Yeah, it only shows me my personal ones, though, not the ones I participate to.
Maybe all the people that can do it are people that kind of owned the Code Climate account for this at one point in time. I definitely created it with my account once, and maybe Georgi and Danny have done it as well. Maybe you just need to go and add that repository then to your account.
Yeah, it tells me open source 0 repositories, but when I want to add one, it just shows me my personal one. cloudfoundry just popped up. Wait. This might be it. Korifi, add repo. Okay, So now, yeah, now I see it in the list of repositories. Maybe this is the key. I guess next issue I'll try to see if I can manually fix it.
That's the
Yeah,
fix.
there's open. Yeah. Now I can.
Yeah, it appears to be a bit of a manual process. I just reset my.
Yeah, so this is how you do it. You go to user settings. I'll maybe type it into the document.
Yep.
You go to user settings. And then what is it? GitHub. And then there is a thing that says access public for repos. And then you'll see the public repositories, and then
Yeah, it appears it doesn't add them
Terrible.
all automatically. You have to click add on the repos you want.
yeah,
Your
it's an
dashboard.
awful.
And if you don't do that, then it doesn't give you that ability again.
Lovely.
It's a bit, yeah, because yeah, it's a bit
Anyway, I'm glad
Fixed.
we kind of found at least a way for people to get logged into Code Climate and have the repo there, even if it is slightly suboptimal. But cool.
Yeah, I guess there's no other way.
Wow.
So hopefully this works for everyone. If you find it doesn't, then reach out and we can try to resolve it for you. So I think we're done with that topic. We can move along to the next fun topic. Thank you, Phil, for adding it. And that is the CFR-K8s deprecation strategy. So as people have maybe noticed, and we've talked about a little bit over the past several months, CFR-K8s has been in a sort of feature freeze mode, maintenance mode, where we've been pretty much focused on just remedying some CVs and whatnot, but not actually doing active development on it, while we focus more on the sort of newer generation in Korifi. And so as part of that, we need to figure out what we actually want to do to sort of put it in the freezer, so to speak. So I guess the thrust of the discussion is, what are the needs of people for sort of a ultimate wrapping up? And how do we go about that? And so I think before I step off the stage and let people speak, I think the biggest things from my point is probably to produce a new set of images, just to sort of make sure everything's up to date, and publish that as sort of a patch release, as well as mark on the repo that it is in pretty much just maintenance mode at best, and to also sort of link people to Korifi and other things. And then the follow-up is anyone that is a current user of CFR-K8s, I'd like people to try to use Korifi and see what needs it fulfills and what things it maybe is falling short on right now. But with that, I'm going to step off the stage to let the rest of y'all sort of talk and see where I've stumbled. Anyone have thoughts? I'm happy to talk for a little more if people want me to.
My only thought is just like a +1, because it's like I saw last week Seth mentioned, hey, bump your Ruby in your cloud controller image because we're on Ruby 3. I was like, wait a second, we haven't pumped cloud controller since September 2021. So that new Ruby's not going to work. So like I think even though we are like keeping up to date for like Istio and UAA and stuff, it's like still like the fact that's just lingering out there is actually a negative for the community. So this is positive.
We also have, we are maintaining README, the one that's used in CF4K8s. We all have the, well, already reduced pipeline, but still we're spending money on it. If that's not unimportant. So if we decide just to archive the project, then we can tear down all that infrastructure. It'd be useful. We could use it for something more useful.
Yep. Likewise, the set of pipelines that CF4K8s uses directly have a bit of infrastructure associated with them. And we've paired off a little bit of the sort of like live uptime stuff, but there's still a bit more we could tear down and free up for other cloudfoundry projects and all that. So I guess from super high level, that's the notification of people and sort of writing on the landing page, the README for CF4K8s to tell people front and center that, hey, we aren't doing active feature development. Take that as you will. We'll try to make sure people don't get railroaded by something nasty, but for the most part, it's sort of look at the new stuff. And if someone is interested in maintaining CF4K8s or extending the feature set, then that's definitely something we can talk about in the working group forum here and all that. But with the amount of resources we have right now, with the people at this meeting and our associated friends, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put a lot of attention to it.
Yeah, and I think for me too, like it might just be good to, whether we do it in this doc or not, I don't know, like, but come up with like, here are the whatever 6 things we want to make sure we do, potentially in order roughly, that says, okay, like, you know, we want to put notifications on the repos, we want to put notification, whatever. I don't, you know, I think calling that stuff out like as an itemized list will be really helpful to be like, okay, cool, this makes sense. And then I see Chris, you joined as well, like Ram and Chris, if you guys have opinions on like where things go and how long we should go between steps and things like that, I think that might be helpful too.
I mean, I would say, you know, once you put it out to the wider community and just as long as you let people know as soon as possible, I think that's great. I mean, if you can give people 6 months or some nice comfortable chunk of time before you cross over and stop maintaining CF4K8s, that's great, but maybe less is fine too. Just I put something on CF Dev and in the general Slack and just kind of let everyone know what the thinking is, and we'll see if end users come back and say, you know, this is terrible, or if, you know, or if most people are comfortable moving to Korifi soon.
Makes sense. Well, and I know that we did an announcement last year that we were going to start reducing support for it. So, you know, I don't know how much of a backlash there was at that point or response, but you know, I'm wondering if that would count as part of our quote unquote 6 months, even though I know that was just a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, that's an arbitrary time frame.
Just,
you know, as long as you know, I would propose some amount of time, right?
Yeah.
So people have something to work with, and then see if end users say that you could say 3 months unless people, you know, object. And yeah, I don't have any sense of like what kind of backlash or how well that'll be received, but yeah, I mean, there's some advantage to, announcing that as soon as you can, just so that people know, and that gets you hopefully closer to being able to no longer maintain that sooner rather than later.
Does anyone have a link to the announcement from, it was last August, and I think it actually was pretty strongly worded. Like it wasn't just like soft.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Like I think this
I
has
can
been,
try and dig that up. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, then I would just say, yeah, sometime this fall, give a date. I don't know what let you all decide that, October 1st or whatever. When, the CF for K8s repositories will no longer be maintained, and everyone should move over to Korifi. And then, whatever, yeah, it would be nice to work on whatever migration docs there might be at this point to make those as polished as can be for that.
Cool. Some good thoughts, definitely.
I guess the only other thing that I wanted to ask was, can we be open and straightforward about Korifi being like the de facto replacement for CF for K8s? Is that a statement / positioning that we want to take and call that out explicitly on our docs, in our announcements, etc.? Because giving people an alternative and providing the path towards migrating to that, I think will make the whole announcement a little more palatable. So I just wanted to clarify about that and ask what people thought about it.
That sounds like a good idea.
Seems
Are
like
we like?
Maybe we should ask the question, do we support the same set of features here for K8s?
Yeah, there's I guess there might be expectations. If we tell people move from this to that, people might assume that the new thing is just as feature complete or just as stable or
Right.
more than the other. So we need, if we want to do that, we need to clarify. No, we're not there yet, probably, just because the starting points were very different. We are rebuilding a thing from scratch over here, so it's going to take a bit longer to get to the point where CF for K8s was, because CF for K8s was recycling existing components, so by definition. Right. But other than that, yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, CF for K8s was never. I guess we released 1.0. Yes, that maybe might have sent sort of a message, but I don't think it's that big of a deal to say, we're replacing something that was potentially more stable, more feature complete with this new thing, because we thought it was the good thing to do. I mean, it would have been a bit weird if the thing we're replacing were like super stable and super used, and suddenly we chuck it away for something that is not comparable. Right. But like, right. I think CF for K8s wasn't that, didn't have that big of an adoption to begin with. So even if we're doing this trend, what feels like a kind of a step back, in order to make 2 steps forward, then it doesn't feel that big of a deal.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Sorry, Phil, is we don't have an estimate for what's the volume of usage behind CF for K8s. So unfortunately, it's difficult for me to like make a statement about, let's just pull the plug and ask everybody to move over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from what we see on Slack, it's not much, right? I think we've talked with maybe one person who's stated that they were using it in prod, but like, and then probably there might be more that just never told us because they don't have to tell us. But like, the estimate is, I think, low, although we don't have numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in terms of like the step forward, step back, right? Like one of the things I think we want to be clear about is, while it may be a step back at the moment in terms of features, it's a step forward in the terms of like architecture and technology and things like that. It's the right direction. It's just, recreating all of cloudfoundry on top of Kubernetes is not a small task, right? So
Yeah, as I said, like it's a complete rewrite versus just rearranging existing components plus some custom
yeah,
thing,
Yeah.
which was a README basically, very thin custom layer, and that was it. So it's a completely different scope. But I can see from a user standpoint that it's like I'm just pushing apps and I'm seeing this amount of features, and now I'm seeing this. I might potentially not care at all about the architecture, and I'm seeing like like I'm seeing something that it was like actually quite complete in its and quite. I mean, it probably wasn't on par, but it had pretty much every feature that CF on VMs had, with something that is still far from there. Although, of course, I agree it's the right direction to go, but like I think we need to phrase it well. Like as you said, like we need to deliver the message properly, so that it doesn't look like we're leaving people, I guess, with
and I think
a
those,
subpar alternative.
yeah, I was gonna say I think those gaps are great places to be like to recommend engagement and making sure like, hey, if this is something that you need, you know, we get it on the roadmap. You know what I mean? We plan for it and say, okay, you know, understood. You know, whatever it is that you're looking for, it's not there yet, but based on community need, we'll get it on the roadmap. So yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. Well, a little bit of a heavy topic, but I think we got some good output and a little bit of direction there. So hopefully this will go smoothly over the next few months. Hopefully we can get some more people checking out Korifi and seeing what holes we need to fill. If there aren't any other immediate thoughts, I'll probably move us along. We can revisit this obviously in future meetings because it will be an ongoing thing. So
what's the next action? Is it to prepare an email? Is it to like what do we do next to push this forward?
So I think some of the prep work I'm gonna do is sort of the updates to the README and also corresponding to website and sort of build new images for just sort of a put some polish on, or at least refresh the images in preparation of a release to take care of that. And then probably post in some of the various Slack channels asking for people to check out Korifi and have them give us information on what features we need. And sort of let them know that while we've been in maintenance mode, we're starting to go into more deep freeze mode in the next some amount of time. So that's kind of my personal action items on that. I don't know if I'm missing anything.
I think just the last thing would be like a follow-up CF dev email as like the capstone on all that work.
Yeah, okay. Makes sense. And obviously, there are people that can help me with that. You know,
I don't know if
but
we've
definitely-
discussed this recently, but that also might be good to accompany with another beta, like a 0.2 of Korifi, if we feel like we're at a good release point. I know it's been, what, over a month since 0.1? A variety of things we've been getting in.
Yeah, that's true. Like we have a couple of epics that have been either finished or close to be finished. So we should tie a new beta to those. Like we have enough meat for a new beta, I think, with the whole new orgs and space stuff, the task stuff. It's more than enough for a new release.
Cool. Awesome. Good thought, Eric, on that one. And definitely for any communications from the mailing list, I'll be reaching out to Eric, Chris, or Rom, or someone to make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and there are no feet and mouth and things like that.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Sure, but Rock, anytime.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, then let's, assuming we're good to move forward. Let's move on to the next topic, which is shim API logging improvements. I think there's a related GitHub issue, but let's get this one rolling.
So for the last couple of days, we've been working on some various improvements on API shim logging, extracting common bits here and there. But most importantly, first we aligned the log level, the severity level for log entries, so that until like this is still a PR, but if you look at the API logs, you're going to see a bunch of errors with stack traces, which are actually expected states of the system. For example, the user provided wrong input, which is not an error from point of Korifi. So now all those are logged as infos. We also improved the logging of the requests. So we used to have the correlation IDs, which correlate various requests, but now you can, when you grab for a correlation ID, you can see the incoming request details like URL, method, and you can also see the response, how much time did the processing of the request take. So looks pretty neat. This is currently a PR. It contains quite a lot of changes, but if you want to, you could have a look. And as per this issue,
I dropped a link to the PR in the document.
maybe sort of related. I mean that we did not spend much time on the formatting. We concentrated on the level only, mainly. Other than that, we didn't do much change as logging content.
Okay. Yeah, I just tossed that in there because I know we had a logging epic potentially lined up to kind of clean up our logs because, of course, the format is a huge mess.
Yeah, it all started when working on a story for tasks. We thought that we should log infos for things like forbidden or not existing or things like this. And then we thought, can we not extrapolate this on all handlers? So it became one big change. So yeah, maybe certain overlapping with this issue as well.
Yeah. Well, some of the stuff that you have that you resolved in this PR was called out in that document, particularly the don't log errors when the user makes a mistake part. So that's all good.
Yeah, that's all kind of automatic now and tied in with the whole error system. So when you return an API error, that's a user error and it will be logged as an info. And if you just throw any other error that won't cast to that or won't be wrapping any of those things, and it comes out as a 503. But you just have to use the helper method now that you see in all the handlers, API errors, log and return or something.
Sounds good.
Cool. Definitely need to review that PR, look into it. But thanks for putting in work on that. I know logging is not the most glamorous thing, but it's kind of important. And it's something that I've noticed that occasionally we don't put as much effort as I'd like, but that's the nature of trying to make sure the features get buttoned up. So improvements are awesome. And anyone else on the call or that you run into, this is also a great part of the code base to get involved in if we want to get first contributors, is to improve logging. Yeah. Cool. Any other thoughts before we carry on? All right. Then the next topic is the next EMEA epic. So.
Yeah, so we are very close to finishing the tasks work. I think we have like 2 ongoing stories plus 3 in the to-do, so I expect it to be done soon. So I started thinking about the next thing. And there were a couple of ideas, couple of proposals. One was doing the work on the annotations and labels across all resources. And my understanding is that there is already a proposal for that. So maybe I wanted to hear from people who wrote the proposal / have context on the proposal to see if how you feel, how ready you feel it is for us to just turn into stories and pick up. And the other thing would be maybe accelerating on the task workload work so that we can finish the README assimilation and inlining so that we get rid of README, we put it to sleep and it's gone. And that's fine. And that's, I think that will be also kind of a good thing to do because we get rid of a dependency, we get to rewrite that kind of old code. And we get some consistency because now we have some things done via the new components, some things still done via the old components. But that one would take a little bit longer because I would have to write a proposal, although I could probably borrow a lot from the existing, from the other one, the, what is it called, the run workload. They're probably gonna look very similar. And then write all the stories, feels like a bigger chunk of work. So maybe one thing that could make sense is if it's quicker to come up with the label and annotation stories, do that. And while the team is working on those stories, I work on the proposal and stories for the tasks stuff. Or the alternative is I just start straight away with the tasks because it's more stuff to do. So the sooner the better. So I just wanted to gather opinions and then I guess we'll decide which way to go. Or if there is any other epic that you think should be started or any other proposal that is sitting there that could be worked on, or maybe stories in the US backlog that could be picked up, anything like that. Any ideas? Because soon our to-do is going to be pretty much empty. I mean, it's going to be just chores, I guess. So we need to find stuff to do. And it would be nice to have some feature work because yeah, we can do chores, but it's nice to have at least one feature track.
So I wrote the labels and annotation proposal. I made an epic, but I haven't started writing the stories for it. I honestly think the task workload consolidation is more valuable and probably better for interesting and work to be done. The labels and annotation stuff to start with is just like pure CRUD like work. Like it's like adding additional fields to some of our JSON structs and like just like implementing a few new patch endpoints that accept them for resources. So it's I can make stories for that and just like churn them out and then both teams can pick them up as like filler work probably, but it's not like a high context or like particularly interesting track of work.
Yeah, I was thinking of it as something to give me some time to work on the meteor proposal and the story, right? Because like for tasks, what I thought was actually a very quick and straightforward epic took me a long time to write the proposal and then to write all the stories. And the more I wrote stories, the more I realized I was missing stories and it kind of exploded. I think this is going to be the same. Yeah. So maybe a quick, provided it's actually quick, epic to put in between while I do all this work to keep the team busy, maybe it could be a good idea.
Yeah, I can start making stories for it. So like for context, I wrote a lot of the stories and did the like epic or whatever you want to call it for Cloud Controller for the same track of work for it. And the team back then burned through them very quick. Of course, that was Ruby, and you could just like write a module and import it, and you get the behavior everywhere. But it's just like pure CRUD at this point, because we're deferring the actual propagation and stuff to a future epic to decide where that makes sense and if there's any kind of allow or deny lists of labels to propagate and stuff. So this one is just like you accept them, put them on the CR, and then read them back out. But I can start making stories, and then like if y'all want to pick them up, that would be good.
Yeah, or I can do that. The acceptance is going to be fun, I guess. Just go through every single resource on the system to see that it's actually properly doing whatever it's supposed to do. But I guess it has to be done. So it's going to be a bit tedious, but that's the nature of it, I guess, of these cross-cutting things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to, I guess I was, the reason I was saying I could write the stories and accept them was if you want to focus on the task workload stuff.
Yeah, if you have the time and capacity, then I can start doing the task stuff straight away, and that saves me even more time and gives me even more of a kind of a head start.
Yeah, like I think I can turn these things out pretty quick.
Cool. That's even better.
In terms of if there's other epics, I'm not positive. I feel like there's got to be something else that's important, but nothing springing to mind.
Well, we'd also been, Julian, I know you'd been working on a proposal about a specific like CF role resource that would encapsulate a bunch of the role permissions that we've been associating to org spaces. I know that's maybe a little bit more nebulous right now, but it could be another area to be working on.
Yeah, if y'all just wanted to take that, that would be a definite possibility. I mean, I guess my plan for that was just to write an explore or like a spike story and start spiking it out so that we can kind of start solidifying plans for an implementation. But you know, it's also possible that, like, I know Karen spent a ton of time thinking about this and maybe already has more opinions than we do in the US. So we could just hand that off. That would be more interesting probably than adding annotations.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to choose, I'd probably choose the task workload just because
sure,
feels like such an outstanding piece of work that like it just feels wrong not to have it done yet. It's like that thing that it really kind of sticks out as odd. So I would definitely do that first. And like in terms of implementation, I think we should be fine because we implemented the README equivalent. So I guess we should have some context on the code side as well. But after that, because again, like it really depends on how long these things take. I think the run workload and the build workload epics, I feel like they went through relatively quickly. Like, I don't know if it's just because we are not the ones doing them, but like I kind of saw them pass by quite quickly. So it might be the same for tasks. I don't know.
Yeah, it may well be. I think getting the framework in took more time than the actual implementation. We just lifted a small piece of README out. Yeah, well, I would agree that getting README out of our dependencies feels like a more critical thing.
Yeah, and then everything will be nice and consistent, and we'll finally reach our initial vision. It will be pretty nice to just get it done. Have those interfaces.
We'll be back down to one funny 6-letter Greek word that's difficult to spell. Coming back to the labels and annotation proposal, I'll drop a link into that. I mean, it was looking pretty complete to me. I know there's some discussion at the bottom about any potential concerns about security or reserved labels, but is it correct that we're just at this point, since we're not really propagating any labels, we're just kind of want to document things that are reserved for CF usage and otherwise keep it unrestricted?
Yeah, because what it means to reserve a label is like actually pretty tricky when there's no like gatekeeper to setting the labels. Like if we enforce it with a webhook, then our own controllers, which may reserve that label, are now impacted by that webhook. So that's part of why like this initial epic is scoped around just getting the the API endpoints in place so people can use them and set them on the custom resources, which won't have any great impact. And then we'll reserve the right to just clobber. If someone uses like a reserved label or something, we'll just clobber it with one of our mutating webhooks or whatever to be what it should be. Where the security concerns come in is when you start propagating them down to things like the pods or like a anything that's selected on like by a service or something, because then you could cause misrouting and stuff. But as it is right now, people don't have a way like through the shim or through the higher level resources to do that. And if we just continue to do that propagation through our controllers that make these underlying resources, then it should continue to be safe. And then we'll have more control over like what's reserved and what's not and stuff. So that's my thinking around there right now, that with the scope of where this is at, just like implementing the APIs and setting it on the CRs, it should be pretty safe and nothing too dastardly could occur.
Cool. Well, as an umbrella, I think we have a path forward. So I think Giuseppe just take it and run with it on the task stuff. And if you need any help, or if you need a little bit of support on just stories to keep the wheels turning while you're trying to flesh that out, then either reach out, or I would say just dip into anything you see in the America side that you think is reasonable and all that. So yeah, go for it. I think it'll be great to sort of remove that extra dependency, since we felt really good once we got rid of HNC. So marching towards that goal. Cool. Final thoughts? Anyone want to take the microphone? All right, and away we go. Next topic, validation versus reconciliation for CF spaces.
Yeah, I pushed this down to the bottom of the topic list because I was hoping that Matt or Clint would join us, but it seems like they aren't gonna. They picked this story up, or the bug. Denny had put a chore, yeah, and I turned it into a bug and put it into the Americas backlog. Basically, the issue, as I understand it, is in integration testing, we have this race condition where sometimes when we make a CF space, the corresponding CF org object doesn't exist yet, even though the namespace exists. So yesterday, Matt and Clint tried to reproduce this in our actual product, like 6 ways from Sunday, and they were not able to reproduce it. And Matt's explanation was that in the actual product, the same client that is running the webhook and doing the validation is also creating the namespace and reconciling the CF org object. So in the real product, it's much less likely for the client to have a cached miss of the CF org. I think,
you know, the way the cache works, it only gets populated when stuff changes on the server. So if you create something on the client side, it's not in your cache until it comes back from the server again.
yeah, but the reconciler has to fetch the CF org in order to reconcile it. So they tried to reproduce it and couldn't, and tried making the thing busy, tried making orgs and spaces in a tight loop, and weren't able to reproduce it. So they're trying, essentially, they're trying to rationalize, how do we fix something we can't reproduce? And they couldn't come up with a good justification. So, it's possible that if we were to horizontally scale our manager, then you would have multiple instances with multiple clients, and you could somehow reproduce this. And I don't know if they tried that, which is why it would be nice if they were here to speak to this. But basically they settled on, they came around to like, so as far as we're able to tell, this is a problem in the test, not a problem in the product, until we have evidence to the contrary.
And what tests are we seeing it in?
This is in the integration test, which is simulating the reconcile loop. It's not actually running the controller. So,
so they don't even create the namespace. Something else has to simulate creation of the namespace.
yeah, so the namespace and the org object are getting created in the test code, I guess. This is again, this is secondhand hearsay, so take it with a grain of salt. So they just added an eventually to the test, I think, which is the kind of unpopular answer to this problem. So I guess I just wanted to bring it up since this is our opportunity with the two teams here to have a live discussion.
And is it an API integration test type thing, or is it a controllers one?
Good question.
Webhook validation.
Webhook. And the webhook runs without the other. Does it run without the bit of controller creating the namespaces then?
Yeah.
It's faked. It's a funny old test, isn't it?
yeah. So I guess that's where that kind of comes down to like, yeah, what kind of value are we getting out of this integration test?
I mean, I think it's true. You probably can't reproduce it, but only as long as the webhooks remain like a singleton. Like I know the controllers need to be singleton, like only have one running, but I don't think there's anything like technically why the webhooks couldn't be scaled out, but it's probably fine.
Well, you can't currently scale one without scaling the other.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
manager.
We'd have to make changes to do that, but I think you could technically. And then this would pop up.
Leaving obvious uncertainty behind, did we fix the test or not? Is it actually a problem in our product and so on? My personal opinion is that Kubernetes is built around the concept that the state eventually reconciles into its final state. So it can go through many invalid intermediate states, and this is fine. And just rejecting to create a resource just because a dependency is not there doesn't seem to be quite aligned with this concept, because that dependency may appear later on. Also, people want to create their orgs and spaces by applying YAMLs and not using the APIs. So when you apply an YAML, there is no guarantee how the author of the YAML arranged the objects in that file. So if you just reject to create the space because the org is not there, well, this is going to be a bit unfortunate.
I guess I would disagree with that characterization of this particular check, though, because currently the only valid namespace that you can put the space in is one that was created through the reconciliation of a CF org. So it isn't like you can go make all the namespaces and then make the orgs and spaces after. Like, we don't support that right now. Like, maybe we will in the future, but right now, like, the only way this works is you make your orgs, you wait for them to reconcile, and then you make the spaces in the namespaces that were created. So we already have this dependency. We already can't support somebody making orgs and spaces in a big YAML, right? Without like using cap or something to coordinate it, because it'll just fail out of hand, because even Kubernetes is not okay with you making stuff in namespaces that don't exist. So I think for me, the way we see the product working right now, if somebody makes a space in a namespace that doesn't have an org present, it's much more likely that they're just trying to put a space somewhere they shouldn't. and it's never going to reconcile into something positive. So that's the reason we were trying to test it.
So when you create a CF, so the CF space resource lives in the namespace that is the result of the reconciliation of a CF org,
Yes.
but also has a reference to the CF org object. Is that correct?
Yeah, it
Well, as
does.
far as I'm aware. Well, maybe.
Like it points to the GUID maybe or something.
Yeah, it has parent org or something like that.
So that maybe one of the problems is the redundancy. Like we're basically duplicating that information. Like, what if I try to create a space into org1's namespace, but the space has org2's GUID set into it? You see what I mean? Like,
I think that the validator catches this and going to reject this as well.
So that's what we're trying to, but the validator is the thing that flakes.
Yep.
I wonder if by removing the redundancy, we don't need the validator. Maybe.
Well, one way or
Sounds reasonable.
another, like we are trying to validate, like we have a whole bunch of code that assumes that a space lives in an org, right?
Yeah.
And then we're going to propagate things because we're propagating from orgs. And all we have to do is look in the parent org to find the roles, you know, blah, 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 blah.
And you need to know what's the org for a space. You just need that probably all over the place.
Yeah. So this was supposed to be a cheap and cheerful check to make sure that people don't create spaces in places that aren't in an org, right? Just right up front, just let them know.
So it needs to be an org, and it needs to be the right org for that namespace.
Yeah. And I guess that's where, you know, actually, I'm not sure about the duplicate reference. I mean, it does kind of seem like you ought to be able to infer that from the org, but I'm not sure if we're doing that.
I was just a thought that maybe if you can figure out what's the CF org associated with the namespace, you cannot create anything without a namespace in Kubernetes, right? So maybe we just remove that org reference, explicit org reference, and every time we need it, we'd figure it out from the namespace, because the namespace is a field you can't do without.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the source of this flake.
Okay.
Right. The source of the flake is in this test we ran, which is simulating the controller. We have a case where it's getting created in the namespace and the CF org is not yet in the cache. So it doesn't find it, or the test didn't make it. I don't know if it's like a race condition in the test code. I guess the thing that we found out yesterday is it feels like this is so far just like the bug in the actual product is purely theoretical at this point, barring any other information. So,
but do we want to try to rewrite that test against like a real cluster and see if we can reproduce it, like just that test, literally just that it block against assuming a real cluster, and see if we can reproduce the flake that way?
And I think that's effectively what Matt and Clint spent yesterday morning doing.
And they couldn't.
They couldn't, yeah.
Yes, maybe it is a problem of the test. Yeah. It's kind of a problem with our testing strategy in general. Like when you don't have a realistic enough environment, you just get these funky behaviors that might never occur in the real thing.
Interesting. Certainly some information to chew on. I'm going to do a little time check. We are scheduled on this meeting for a little bit under 1 more minute. So we should probably think about wrapping it up unless something is terribly pressing. So maybe offer your final thoughts on, at least for now, on this, and we can always continue it next week.
I just did want to just say one thing. We are about to sign the contract for our event at KubeCon. For those of you who haven't notified, that is going to be the Tuesday before KubeCon.
Cool.
So you don't need a hotel room for Sunday night, most importantly. But you know, for those of you that are going to come, I hope lots of you can go ahead and, you know, book those flights. So yeah, Tuesday then, and then we'll have a booth on the floor of KubeCon that I'd love to get a good number of Korifi and Paketo folks at on that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And we'll be making a public announcement to the wider community probably this Thursday. So this will all be more fleshed out then, but I figured I'd just mention that to you all now because I'd love to see lots of you come.
Cool. Awesome.
Cool.
Let's drop a note in there.
Has there been a call for proposals already?
That'll come soon. That has not happened yet.
Okay.
All that'll be happening fairly soon.
And this is North America we're talking about?
This is North America, Detroit, Motor City.
Right. Motor City.
Very north, I would say.
Hockey Town, USA. Also Rock City. Yes. Cool. Awesome. That sounds great. Hopefully some of us can make it out there and get to see each other in the flesh, since I think it's been a while since a bunch of us haven't been able to do that. So yeah, awesome. Well then, if that's it, then thank you all so much for attending. Lots of good discussion, lots of good points to jump off and move forward and advance everything we want to work on. So this is awesome. And we will see y'all in about 2 weeks then. So yeah, until then.
Wow.
Yep.